Hello and welcome back. Today we'll be creating a snake game in Java. So let's go ahead and make a new project. Create projects from template and we'll just call this snake. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our main method and we are going to make a constructor called GameFrame. So create a new class and we're going to call it GameFrame. So what this GameFrame is going to do is it's just going to be the outside frame for our GUI, and if you don't know what GUI is, it just stands for Graphical User Interface. So a graphical user interface is something that you see. For example, IntelliJ, this right now is a graphical user interface. It's not like the terminal. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it extend JFrame. So what this means is it will inherit all the properties and method of a JFrame and act just like a JFrame. Make sure you have the imports JavaX swing, because we'll be using the swing library for the GameFrame. So to make the constructor, we type in the class's name and we're just going to do this dot add new GamePanel, but we'll get onto that later. The next thing we'll do is set the title. So the reason we're using this instead of JFrame is because it's already extending a JFrame, so the whole class is acting as a JFrame, and by using the this keyword it's referring to the class. So this dot set title snake, this dot set defaults close operation JFrame dot exit on close, this dot set resizable false, this dot pack, which means it'll just wrap itself around all the components of the GUI, and this dot set visible true, this dot set location relative to null. So that will just put it in the middle of our screen. If we run, we get this small dialog because there's nothing in it. So the next thing we're going to do is to create our JPanel. Now we're going to create the class new GamePanel, and we're going to also make this extend JPanel, imports the swing library, and it implements action listener. So we're getting an error here because with the action listener you need to also add an action performed method. So first we will set out all our variables. Static final int screen width equals 600, static final int screen height equals 600, static final int unit size equals 25. So what these variables will do, these first two will set the height and width of the JPanel, And the second one, the unit size, will be the size of each individual block in our game. So if you've ever seen Snake, they're like tiny little blocks connected together. So that's what the unit size will do. The next thing we'll go on to do is game units. So that will be the amount of units we have in the whole area, and that will be equal to screen width times screen height divided by unit size times unit size, and that will just get us the amount of units we have. Next, we're going to create the delay. And this controls the speed of our game. We're also going to create some arrays, which will be used for controlling the direction of the snake. Next, we're going to put the initial body parts that the snake has, so the length of the snake. And we're just going to set this to 6. We're not going to make this final because we are going to update it every time we eat an apple. Talking about apples, we will create an apples eaten variable. And we'll just leave it like that. That will be updated every time the snake goes over an apple. Int apple x and apple y. So these will be the coordinates of the apple, and they will be random. Now that we've done that, let's go on to our HighScore variable. We'll be storing the HighScore variable so that the user can know the highest score of the players, and then we'll also have a direction variable which will just be a char, and so this snake will initially be going right. Boolean of type called running, and this will just be if the actual game is running, and at first it'll be false. Then we just need timer, and also a random variable, random. So what we can do is we can go up here to limit the amount of imports we have. We can just put auth events star, so that will just import everything from there, and we can change this to Java auth, and that's it. So the next thing we will do is we'll go on to make our constructor. GamePanel. The first thing we're going to write in our constructor is we're going to finish off our random variable. So random equals new random. This dot set preferred size new dimension, and we're just going to pass in screen width and height. Next, this dot set background color dot black. This dot set focusable true. This dot add action listener, key listener is new MyKeyAdpter. So we will create the MyKeyAdpter class in a second, and we're also going to create our start game method. So here, public void start game, new apple, that's one of the things we're going to do. Running variable will set equal to true, and timer is equal to new timer delay, and this. So we were talking about our action listener, MyKeyAdpter. So what MyKeyAdpter does is it allows us to listen to clicks and button presses from the user. So this will allow us to be able to control our snake. So let's go create that class now. So we're going to actually create this class within the class. So to do that, you go public class MyKeyAdpter, and we're going to make that extend KeyAdpter. We're going to add @override public void key pressed. So this will log our key events, and so we're going to use a switch case. And what a switch case is, it's just like a if variable, but it allows us to present it in a much more easier way. So the switch is essentially the thing that's where the condition that we're looking at, and the case is the different things that condition could be. So if we go switch e.get key code, so that's whatever the key pressed is, case. So the first case will be key event dot vk key events dot vk underscore left, so that will be the left, and if direction is equal to, is not equal to right, then we'll set direction equal to left. So what we're saying, by saying if it's not equal to right, and we'll set it to left, we're making sure that the user can't go essentially back on themselves, so that the game runs well, and break. So this just breaks out of this area. Case key. So we can just copy this and change it for the other ones. So VK left, VK right, VK up, and VK down. So that is our key adapter. So we can go back to our constructor and add that back in. So the next method that we're going to create is new apple. So what this does is it essentially creates a new apple in a random area of the screen. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to use the graphics to draw an oval, and we'll be able to go over it and collect the apple. So before we do that, we're actually going to create our paint component method. So what super.paint components does is that when the constructor is called, it will automatically call this method as well. And we're going to draw G. So to create our draw method, it's going to take in parameters of graphics, G. If running, then we're going to use a for loop to create a tiny little grid boxes. So for int I is equal to 0, while I is less than screen height divided by unit size, then we're going to draw a line. So the x1 value will be I times unit size. Y1 value will be 0. I times unit size for x2 and screen height. So if we run what we've got so far, we need to add one more thing to our for loop. We need to iterate, so I++. Now you'll see that our thing is still empty. That's because we need to go here and add our game panel. And you see we get all these vertical lines going, so now it's time to add the horizontal lines. So will essentially be the same, but instead we will have 0 as x1, I times unit size, screen width, and I times unit size. So if we do that, we've got the little boxes, and this one of these little boxes is going to be the size of the apple and also of the snake head and all the snake body parts. The next thing to do is we are going to create the tiny little apples. So let's break out of this for loop. g.setColor color.red, g.fillOval. So the x value will be apple x, y value apple y, and the size will be unit size Now we're going to add another for loop. So what this will essentially do is that while I is less than the body parts, I will increase, and what we will do with I is if it's equal to 0, we will set the color of the snake to color.green. We'll also fill the rectangle with the coordinates of the array from position 1, y position 1, unit size, that will be the width, and the height. So now that we've done that, we'll go on to our else, which is if the snake body is longer, we'll set the color to a RGB color, new color, and the R value 45, 180, 0. And we will fill the rectangle just like we did here. The next thing we'll do is set color to color.red. So this will be for the score text. Set the font to new font, and we are going to use Monaco for this. Font.plain, and the size will be 40. Font metrics. Metrics is equal to get font metrics and g.getFont. So this is essentially just going to get data about the font, and we'll draw a string. So the string will be score, and it will have the amount of apples eaten, screen width minus metrics dot string width, so that will take away the string width from the for the x value, and we'll just type in exactly what we've got here so we can get the right measurements. Divided by 4. And then g.getFont get size. So that's done. So this has all been in a massive if if brackets. So we're going to put our else now. Else we will save HighScore. Apples eaten. And game over G. So these are methods we'll implement, but for now we can comment them out. So the next methods we'll be making are our new apple method, which will get a random height and, well, random coordinates for these. So public void new apple. For int, oh sorry, wrong thing. Say apple x is equal to random dot next int screen width divided by the unit size plus unit size. The same for apple y, but we will change screen width to screen height. Now to create our move function, but before we do that we can uncomment the new apple here because we've created that method. So public void move for int I is equal to body parts, while I is more than 0 we want to decrement I. So the x array, get the value at I, and that will be equal to the same x array and I minus 1. So whatever that value is, that's what the value at I will become. So that way it'll move along the screen, and we'll do the same for y. Now for another switch case, so switch direction this time, case u, we y array 0 will be equal to y array 0 minus the unit size. So it will make the snake to move up because it will move all the blocks up. And break. So we can copy this and use it for the other 3 directions. So up, down, left, right. So for down, instead we'll be adding the unit size, and because we're going left and right, it'll be the x-axis instead. So plus unit size there. So that's all done, and we've got our break. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if we have actually eaten the apple. So public void check apple, So if x at array at 0 is equal to apple x, put these in their own set of brackets, and y at 0 is equals to apple y, then we can simply add body parts, because then we know we're on top of the apple. Apple's eaten, we can add, and we can create a new apple because we've eaten it. We'll also need to be checking for collisions, because then we'll have to trigger our end game scene. Check collisions. So the first one we're going to do is to check if head collides with body. For int I is equal to body parts, I is more than 0, I minus minus. So if x at position 0 is equals to x at position 1, and so we need to put these in their own set of brackets. Y at position 0 is equals to y at position 1. Then we will set running equal to false, and that will cause the end game over scene to trigger it to call. It will call the end game scene. Next we'll check if it touches each of the different borders, touches left border. So if x at 0 is less than 0, then running is equal to false. The next thing we're going to do is to check if it touches the right border. So if x at position 0 is more than the screen width, then we'll set running equal to false. Next, we will be checking for the top and bottom borders. So, if y, because this time we're looking at the up and down axis, if y at position 0 is more than screen height, then we'll set running equal to false. But if this is for the bottom border, this one needs to be if it's more than 0. So that's it for our check collisions. And so what we'll do is to trigger the end scene if running is equal to false, then timer.stop. before we create our game over method, we'll create a HighScore method. Be a very quick method, so public void save HighScore. So this will take in a parameter of int, and that will just be score. So if score is more than HighScore, which is the global variable. So what this is saying is if the current score that the person has gotten is more than the HighScore, HighScore is equal to score. That's it. So now to create our game over method. Public void game over, and that's going to take in the parameter graphics G. So this is for the score on the end screen. So G dot set color, color dot red, G dot set font, new font, that's going to be Monaco, fonts dot plain, and it'll have a size of 40. Next we'll go on to make metrics for this. So font metrics, metrics 1 is equal to get font metrics G dot get font. So now we're going to draw a string, and it will just have the score on it. Apples eaten, because that's the score. The x value will be screen width minus metrics 1 dot string width, and we'll simply copy and paste this. Divide that by 4. Minus 75, and then G dot get font dot get size. So we can copy this and use it for our HighScore text. So change this to HighScore. Instead of apples eaten, it'll be HighScore. Same thing here. Divided, we won't actually divide it by 4, just minus 75, G dot get font, get size. Now for our game over text. G dot set color, color dot red, G dot set font, new font, and that's going to be Monaco. Fonts dot bold, and the size will be 75. Fonts metrics, metrics 2 is equal to G, so get fonts metrics, G dot get fonts, G dot draw string, game over screen width minus metrics 2 dot string width game over divided by 2, and the Y will simply be screen width. So that's it for our game over method. So the next thing we're going to do is our action performed method. So this is it'll be able to it's triggered every time there is an action performed on the keyboard. So if running, so that's if the game is running, it should move, check Apple, and check collisions. Else it should just repaint. Now we can go back and uncomment those comments from before, because we've now implemented those methods. So here, save HighScore, and the HighScore will be apples eaten, and game over G. So our game is ready to run now. Press on the run tab, we see here the score. We can see that the apple isn't actually on the squares and the touch input doesn't seem to be responding. So let's go fix that. So one thing we forgot to add was we forgot to actually start the timer. So timer.start. If we run it now, we can see our moving, but we just ran straight into a wall. So rerun it. Right, so the reason the apples weren't in the correct position is because we actually need to times it by the unit size. If we run, you'll see the apples are now nicely inside the box. We also need to change that from more than to less than, and it should work now. So yes, it's moving. Our score is increasing, but the body parts aren't. And as you could see there, we hit the game over. So the remaining things to fix are this game over up to the top, and we also need to add the body parts. To fix the game over fonts, what we need to do is come here and add divide by 2. That way it will be in the right Y position. So if we just die, you'll see here that the score is 0, HighScore is 0. Right. The next thing we need to do is actually add body parts to the snake. So while I was trying to fix that bug, I realized there were some things wrong with our code. So the first thing was our check collisions method. You needed to change from the X-ray, instead of going to index of 1, it's meant to be I. So make sure that it's I instead of 1. And then for our draw method, we also needed to make sure that's I index as well. So if we run it now, see we get this snake, and it gets longer as you go along. So the great thing about having made this is that you can make it your own, you can change the colors, you can add extra features to it. If you would like to see more content, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.